Trapped on a remote island that won't let you leave, the Forest Cathedral looks to be a thriller with some pretty unique mechanics. So if you're into puzzles, mystery, and suspense, this game might be for you. What I think is the coolest part about this one is that you play as scientist Rachel Carson. That name might sound familiar to you because she wrote the book Silent Spring back in the 60s, which brought to light the irreversible damage caused by pesticides. Her work ultimately led to the ban of DDT in the US, but it was a bit controversial, mainly because chemical manufacturers didn't want people to know what was really going on with their products. So just imagine that you're a few weeks away from publishing your work and extremely powerful companies like DuPont catch wind of it. That's where the Forest Cathedral takes off, but instead of the corporations trying to stop you, it's the environment itself. Now this game isn't a word-for-word retelling of history, and it definitely takes some artistic licenses. I'm not quite sure how this 2D platformer ties into the overall story, but Rachel calls the character she controls Little Man. My guess is that maybe this device lets us pilot a robot that can go places we can't and interact with the world for us. Here we see this fish tank and these bars raise up after solving a puzzle in the game. Whatever's going on, it's not just a random minigame thrown into a walking simulator to take up time. Rather, it's an interactive mechanic to help engage players and tell a more compelling story. The game's description specifically says, use advanced environmental technology to solve 2D/3D connected puzzles. So there's something else going on here that isn't fully shown in the trailers. Besides acting as a gaming handheld, this device is also used to view contamination levels in the environment and to seek out hidden paths or signals for us to follow. And once we start to discover the truth behind DDT, we try to warn someone before its effects become too widespread. But the island is trying to silence Rachel Carson, and it's up to us to make sure the truth gets out. One thing we love to see in games is accessibility options, and the Forest Cathedral will be full of them, including spineless and float modes and the option to use the open Dyslexic typeface. Players can choose to remove deadly spikes and decrease the speed at which they fall in order to make more precise landings a bit easier. The Forest Cathedral is being developed by Brian Wilson from Whitethorn Games, where they take accessibility seriously and look to publish games with these features from the get-go rather than as an update later on. The game is set to release in the first quarter of 2023. But if that's a little too far away and you're looking for some games similar to this one that you can play right now, then I have two recommendations. The first is The Pedestrian. Now this game also has 2D platforming puzzles within a 3D world, but there's no interaction between these different spaces like there is in the Forest Cathedral. However, it is a neat little puzzle game that plays with the environment in some cool ways and definitely has its own identity. The other game I want to talk about is Nuts. It has a similar narrative where you're a researcher who goes out into the wilderness and starts to put together pieces of a weird mystery. It's one of those games that gives you an uneasy feeling in the pit of your stomach, where something's off but you haven't quite figured out what it is yet. As long as the visual style doesn't bother you, Nuts is definitely worth your time. So thank you to all of you who made it to the end of this video. Let me know if you've played any of these games I mentioned or plan on it, and I'll see you next time.